Dawn on a Sunday morning, normally quiet. But already visitors who had crowded Jerusalem for the Passover celebration were choking the roads. The early start would mean they could have a few hours of travel before the sun began taking its merciless toll on any who dared walk when it was at its height. A small handful of women walking with the pilgrims would scarcely be noticed. The crowd acted like camouflage to mask their movement toward the tomb. That would get them there, but then what? The stone was going to be difficult enough, but the soldiers, what were those women going to do about the soldiers? Maybe they could appeal to their better nature. Perhaps God would give their hard hearts a moment of softening, but that would only get them near the tomb, but not still in it. The spices they carried were a last tribute of love. Another day or two, and the body would show the unmistakable signs of decay, and no spice could stop that. It was as inevitable as death itself. Still, they wanted to anoint the bodies that was so hastily put in the tomb on Friday, a sealed tomb, guarded. They would stand outside of it, just a few inches of stone separating them from the Lord. But despite the hopelessness, they pressed forward. The days with Jesus had taught them that the impossible melted before him. But that was when he was alive. Not sure how it works when he is dead. As they reached the garden, their hearts banged a rhythm in their ears, seeming to announce their approach. The fire was there, but in the early light of dawn, they could not see any people, certainly no Roman soldiers. They thought maybe some of his disciples would come, like they had, but they were nowhere either, just quiet. They slowed their approach, as fearful of the stillness as they had been of the soldiers. But as they crept forward, looking back and to the sides, and they were there was nothing there. They were huddled together now, clutching on each other's hands. What was going on? Of all the scenarios that they had imagined, the one unfolding before them right now had never played out in any of their thoughts. Slowly approaching the tomb, they saw immediately that something was wrong. The stone that represented all that was impossible was moved aside. Who did that? When did it happen? Of all the discoveries of that morning, this one at least worked in their favor. They could now go in and anoint Jesus' body without any interference of the guards, who apparently had left in the dark. Then there was another turn, one that sent their soaring hearts into a tailspin. The body was gone. The silence which had marked their time together since setting out for the tomb was replaced by women talking in unison, asking in their own way the same questions. Confusion seized to total control because not one thing that had happened that morning made sense. And this was the most puzzling moment of all. In an instant, two men, but were they men? Two somebodies shared the tomb with them. Falling down, the women pushed their faces to the ground. Hope had once again been swallowed by fear. No, terror. It was then that the confused hush was broken. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Their mental and emotional chaos suddenly calmed. They remembered Jesus predicted all that had happened over the past few days, especially, but at the time it didn't make sense. Now, it all made sense. Every question now had its answer. Every emotion was channeled into joy. Every image took its place in the grand panorama of betrayal, torture, death, and resurrection. Their limbs, which had been so leaden with grief, now surged with holy energy. The spice, well, it would serve another purpose for another day because their Lord, the Christ, had risen from the dead. The disciples must know of this. They must know right now. But how disappointing it must have been when they had their news just dismissed. But Peter and John moved toward the door and down the road, and their walk became a run and a race to know. The tomb was empty, a mute testimony to confirm that the greatest moment in human history, and all of human history, had indeed taken place. But in telling and retelling of that morning, we realize that none but the women knew what it was to enjoy that precious, glorious moment of Easter with a first discovery. They had faithfully attended to him even when their own hearts were shackled by grief. They prepared to serve him without any real hope of accomplishing their task. They took the ground that the brave Roman soldiers deserted, and they had stood in the tomb to find that he was not there. It was their ears that heard what the angels said, and it was their feet that became the first to run and proclaim the defining moment of eternity had found its pivot point. The long shadow of death may be sending its reach across your path, but he is risen. The best hopes for your life and living may have been crushed utterly as to be unrecognizable. But I'm telling you, he is risen. You may have brought unspeakable shame upon yourself. You may have committed evil that seems unforgivable and causes your heart to feel like a rock in your chest. He is risen. That morning's discovery can be yours, so that on this Easter, it will be more than a historical event, but one that brings the living presence of the resurrected Christ into your life. It can be your pivot point. It can be your defining moment. It can be your Easter morning because he is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah.